Welcome to today's video. Before we go deep into a subject that I'm going to address with someone, this video is also an interview with Claudia that you're going to meet and that does soul contracts reading. I want to tell you a little bit more about my experience and receiving that, but also the very theme of what are soul contracts. So what are soul contracts? It is the understanding and the knowledge of a few lessons that we pick before we incarnate on this planet. And some of them are going to be what makes you awake from the Maya, from the grid, from what is going on here. And you wake up and it takes you out of the same cycles, and you're able to actually learn and remember your conscious being, your soul incarnate, your higher self, and a few other components towards, what you're creating, what you're adding to, the records of what your soul has been up to in this journey towards consciousness and towards growth and evolution. So, you've been doing things in different past lives, and if you want to know more about your past lives, if you want to actually go under meditation and a kind of hypnosis for you to experience your past life, I made a video, so please check it out and have fun, and then come back here. If you're still here, okay, so let's go a little bit deeper into those soul contracts. It is really something that you write and that you prepare before you come to Earth. And I offered a workshop called the Causal Chakra, which is, we have the Zeal Chakra here. It's one of the transpersonal chakras that we don't often talk about. And I made a whole video about it because I have a lot of workshops about that. Just here. And I made a whole video about all the transpersonal chakras because it's my work, and I offered 7 workshops. They're part of my school membership. You can click here if you want to know more about them. But we have the Zeal Chakra here, which is all about the past lives. And then when you go out of your body and you actually are behind your head within that axis, you tap into the Causal Chakra, which is like a pearl essence chakra that has all the colors within it. And when you go there and you meditate there, which is what my workshop offers, you're able to go through a rainbow bridge that is between those two, and you're basically taken to that time before you incarnated, and you can see what are the requirements and the developments of what you chose to experience in this life. And knowing this, like what's the purpose of all this, it's kind of understanding what you might be experiencing, but you don't fully understand what's at play, and kind of having that zoomed out perspective. And it really helps. It really helped me for understanding really big wounds that I was not able to figure out and to heal because I didn't have the words, or I didn't understand the purpose of what was happening in my life. So we usually kind of, try, and then there's so many criterias at play on this earth that we don't fully have the objectivity and the clarity towards knowing what's happening. And when you're able to tap into the soul contracts first, it's sometimes very difficult. Like, to be very honest, it was very harsh, and I really needed time to integrate what was there. But the more you actually give attention to what's on that list and what's there, then you can begin to heal, or you can change. You can rewrite those soul contracts. Maybe you don't agree with what's been going on. Maybe your highest self, the person who actually wrote them, was a little bit tough on you. Maybe they were too impacted by the previous life. They just had died, I mean, I say just, but it could have been, 100 years, or, time doesn't exist that way. But they could have been like, okay, we've got to learn this, we've got to do that. And like, I'm very ambitious about all the things that we have to resolve. And maybe it doesn't resonate with you anymore, and maybe you just want something else. So I've been working through that through my Causal workshop, and I've been understanding different things. And then I met Claudia in Istanbul in September, and we talked about that. She is a soul contracts reader. She has a different method to understand the soul contracts than the one that I channeled, and it was fascinating to receive a reading and to see how she could understand me so much. It was very impressive because it really helped me, and the way that she facilitates those sessions is very, yes, you're being faced with what you wrote, and sometimes it's a little bit harsh, and it's a little bit like, oh my god, do I really have to go through this in this life? But it's so warm and so nurturing that it actually kind of unlocks things, and it really helps you to understand different things. And then, you know, I've received this session in October, now it's January. I've had time to, you know, avoid it, and then I've had time to go closer to it, and then I've had time to pick apart a few things and then meditate with it and experience with it. And I'm pretty sure this is going to last my whole life, like trying to, you know, adapt and integrate all of that. But it's really been helping me because there are patterns, and her way of doing it is it's based on numerology and it's based on your name. So basically, I'm gonna now introduce you to the interview so that you can see and understand how she does it, because it's fascinating to see that the name that you chose, the name that you have, was chosen by you. You communicated it to your parents, and those letters, they have a sound, they have a vibration, and they have an energy, and they are kind of changing your life. So maybe changing your name could be helpful. Maybe, you know, understanding that you might have multiple names, like I have 4 names, might be something that is quite interesting and important. And, you know, for example, a lot of people are named after their parents or people in their family. So kind of understanding also what's at play there. Like I have 4 names, and 2 of them are from my grandmothers. So, you know, it's also carrying things that maybe I don't need to carry. And it's also interesting to see how when we change our family name, we change our energy, our vibration, and our soul contracts. Yes, to all the people who get married and change their family name, maybe it could be understood that things change, you know. And that's something that we talk about with Claudia in this video, but it's also something that I've seen, you know. I've been giving sessions for years where I gave Reiki and Akashic Record session, and you can understand the difference between the birth name and then the legal name that might have been changed through marriage. And it's very fascinating how the auras are different, how the energy is different. I mean, yeah, that's something to consider. All right, thank you for listening to me, and let's go right now in our interview. Bye. Dear Claudia, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time, for your energy, and for sharing your wisdom with us, your experience.
No, thank you.
I would love to just ask you who you are. Like, do you want to present yourself, what you do, and what you're about?
Wow. Well, I'm Claudia, and I'm I'm from Colombia, and I moved here when I was really young. And and what do I do? I guess um, when I was 25, 26, that's when my awakening came in, and I had 2 choices. I either go to Colombia and take ayahuasca, or going to the deserts of Joshua Tree and do mushrooms and see what happens. But none of those came in at all. So so then so then I met someone who talked to me about ceremonies. And at that time, I was reading a lot of books about like going back to the indigenous and things like that. And I was like, oh, cool, there's ceremonies. Like, what is ceremony about? And they were like, oh, yeah, you sit around the fire and you basically like just talk. And I was like, great. I'm always being fascinated about like the indigenous way. Until one day, um, I got the opportunity to go, and they were like, oh, but there's another thing, there's a medicine there. And I'm like, I didn't even think there was a medicine. I was just like, there's actually a place where I can go and be connected with the elements and just like heal whatever I need to go, whatever I need to go through. Because at the time I wanted to open my Pandora box. That's what I call my, I guess, my creation. I call it my Pandora box. So I wanted to open that. And so so I go to Baja California, Mexico, and I go into the middle of the desert, and there's this community where there's kids, um, and there's this circle, like this, and like a circle, like literally a built circle, like a building in a circle. And there's this older man. At the time he was like 90, 97, I think. He was 97. And I started basically learning from him. The first ceremony was literally the worst. It was not the best. And then there was things going on in the circle, but for me, I could relate to everything that was going on in that circle, like all the feelings, all the emotions. And and I remember sitting at the at this like little house that they built for the deer. I was sitting on the stairs that were made of wood at the time, and I was looking at them healing people. And in that moment, I felt like this nirvana. I think it's like it was like this, like I knew I was meant to be there, and I was like, this is it. This is my school. This is gonna be where I'm gonna learn a lot of things. And since then, I haven't stopped.
And you also are part of the creation of a new school through Mercurious as well. So you learn and then now you create. That's kind of exciting.
It is exciting because one thing is going to we call it our school. My friends, my brothers and sisters, we call the university of life, of healing in the physical. And when Denise presented Mercurius, I was like, oh wow, this is kind of like the same thing but in digital. But in a way it's like helping people and helping another generation. And going to the university, going to Mukunitsi, that's the name of the land, um, and learning from the land for all these years and from the people. Like at the end of the day, my teacher always told us like, your guys are here to learn, but one day you guys are going to be teachers. And you don't realize that you are actually there to do that because you're constantly healing, you're constantly walking, you're constantly doing your job, what you're supposed to do as humans, I guess, with the earth, with the elements, that you just so used to it that that's part of your life. And it becomes, yeah, your life becomes a ceremony, your life becomes a tradition, and you kind of walk that path. So when it comes to like Mercurius and everything, it's like, oh, another part of my life, um, to teach and to give, to facilitate, and to give that space for people to heal. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's almost the same. It's weird how it's the same.
It is. But I have a question. You mentioned the plant medicine. Do you have a plant medicine in your ceremonies?
Yes, we use the peyote, which is the hikuri. That's what we call it traditionally. And our medicine comes from the motherland, which is Wirikuta, and it's in Mexico. It's between San Luis Potosí and Zacatecas, and we have a land over there. And that territory, it's all desert. It's
Mm.
literally like beautiful desert, and that's where the medicine grows, the
Thank
hikuri.
you so much for sharing. Wow. It must be wonderful to be connected with that consciousness as well.
Yeah, it's funny because when you're at the motherland or the mainland, we call it, um when you go, even when you go in there, when you're connected, you don't even like the land is already like a lot of energy, and time stops. And then when we do ceremonies in the land, it's just another, it's just so powerful, it's so touch, it's very beautiful. That's why we do it once a year or twice. Because it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Yeah, your
lot.
body, I'm sure, has to be calibrated and like updated to this every time.
The ceremonies usually in the motherland, it's about like, it can go into 2 to a week, because time doesn't exist there. So sometimes it just takes a while for you to process a lot of things in there.
I would love to understand a little bit more about soul contracts because this is what you're offering right now. Those readings are so powerful, and I received one as well, which was very, very helpful for me. It's been a few months that I've been digesting it. Thank you so much. I want to know how you found it, or how it found you, this modality that you're doing.
It came to me. It came to me like a few years ago, to be honest with you. It was I was going through some stuff myself, and I questioned something that I have a grandfather who was a gnosis. He was a gnostic. I don't. Is that high? He was in gnosis, and he was a minister for that. And I remember him talking to me about like soul, like the soul contract. And I remember him doing one where he basically took my grandma's illness for him, and for her not to get affected. So I always actually thought of like, how did he did that? And so one time we were at the bookstore, me, Denise, and everything, and me and Denise and actually my cousin, and Denise was helping my cousin to get a deck of our tarot deck. So then, like a droop dropped, one of those books dropped, and it was the Soul Contract Decoded. And so then I was like, oh, what is this? And then suddenly I just kind of bought it, and it literally was in my shelf for like half of the year. I was like, eh. So, you know, when you buy books, but it's like it's not time for you to read it. So at the time, I was going through some stuff, and that's when I was going through like the Toltec's teachings about the mask and things like that. And I was like, no, there's something more. And then I was just in my room, and something told me to look on my right, and then I looked on my right, and the book was there. So I was like, okay, maybe it's time. So I started looking at the book, and I was literally going through a movement of me myself. I was limiting myself into something. Something was not clicking, and I knew I was going through like, it was, how can I say, it was like at that moment in my life that I needed to make a step, but there was something holding me back, and I didn't know what it was. And I was literally praying to understand what it was. And so I started like reading the book, and I read it, and I was like, this is really interesting. And I researched, and at the same time I was like, okay, let me try out. I tried out to see if I can do my own map, because I actually went through the website, and I was like, okay, let me see about the school, because there's a school for it. I guess there's a school of soul contract. And um and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I can do this. And I started breaking it down. And when I broke it down, I literally started reading everything about my soul contract, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't go get over my physical yet. And then within my physical, it took me a while for me to even like understand what was happening. And it was like something clicked when I read it. I literally broke down, and I just started processing everything. And it was like a sadness, but at the same time it was like an enlightenment for me to understand what was, finally to understand that feeling. When you like go through a feeling, but you actually don't understand until it's like, oh, this is what's going on with you. That's what happened with my soul contract.
I mean, most of the healing happens when you are aware of what the problem is, or like, because you actually have the solutions now. And that's what I love about this. It's that you give recommendations, there's solutions. I definitely was like a little bit like a little bit silent and like to my own after our reading. And like for a few days I was like, like I needed to process it. It was like,
well, imagine, I mean, no one was there to facilitate that for me. So I was just there for me. And so for me, it took me just on the physical karma, it took me, I think, a month and a half for me to go through it. And then I'm like, no, Claudia, you have to go through the physical, to the talents and the goals, and even going to the spiritual karma. That was another month. So it took me almost half a year for me to understand my soul contract, because I literally, it's okay, because I literally like went through it and I cried and I broke down and then I went through it and so I went through a lot of steps, and going through those steps also a lot of things came outside, like my home, and trying to balance it at the same time, going through those things with friendships and things like that. And I'm just like, oh my god, this is too much. And I started realizing that when I started like reading it slowly, I became more aligned with it, and I started processing everything. And now I kind of like had, okay, this is where my ego is. Like I kind of work through it in ceremony, but now it's like, okay, now it has a name, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's nothing around it. Now it has a name, it has a meaning, it has a sense, it has an awareness. So for me, it was really nice to to have the soul contract at that time, because then I remember in the beginning of last year, not this year anymore, of last year, the first thing I did was, okay, I'm gonna facilitate my first ceremony in Sedona. And because if it wasn't for the soul contract, I don't think I would have done it. So and that's when I was like, I can do this, because my doubts and my thing and what was my issue was that I was trying to facilitate a tradition that for me it wasn't mine, because I'm not Mexican. But and that was my problem. Honestly, it was just me, because honestly, the tradition doesn't really matter if you're Mexican or white or black or any other race. What matters is how you learn from it and how far it took you to understand certain things, and at the same time how from your heart you actually facilitated to other people. So it was like the soul contract for me in the beginning of last year was my breakthrough
Mm-hmm.
to to con- to understand why, to complete a cycle of myself, to be honest with you.
I love that. So basically, if we could describe soul contracts, it's something that we wrote before our incarnation, our birth, that our soul, our higher self wrote down. And I've been working with that through the causal chakra that we have behind our head. And I facilitated a workshop that I channeled through the records, and it was all about going back to that time and like witnessing what was happening when we were preparing the life, right? And writing those contracts. And some of them are challenges, like they're difficult, right? And then some of them are destiny. So I would love for you to describe a little bit about that and the separation between physical and spiritual, because I'm sure you have so much wisdom to share that I would not be able to share because, well, because it just is your work. It is your wisdom.
Learning about the soul contract, um, in the beginning, it literally blew my mind. The fact that the fact that we choose our name, we actually choose our name. It's funny because I had a friend who just had a baby, and I was trying to understand how she was choosing her daughter's name. And parents go like, well, I have a name. I have, maybe it's gonna be Capucina, Isabel. I don't know, but it's funny how at the end of the day, in the last minute, parents are like, oh no, this is the name, and they think they chose it, but honestly, they're channeling the name, because at the same time, you're the one who actually channeled the name. You're the one who actually chose the parents that you're coming to. You're the one who wrote what's going to happen within your life in that circumstance of whatever circumstance and learning lesson that you have to do with those parents or your environment. So it's for me, that was in the beginning. I was like, so we do it. So we are here to actually learn something, to have this human experience, and for us to basically wake up out of it and understand the two realms, which is the physical and the spiritual. And for me, the physical, how I understand it, is that it's basically the material world, the perception of the material world. And but in I will like I feel like in the soul contract, the physical and the spiritual, they can also become one, because at the end of the day, either you are here to do spiritual work, or you are here to do to help people, but in the physical, like to facilitate, to construct, to have a business, or maybe to have a center, and to, for you to help people. So within those two, it kind of like, for me, it's kind of like two snakes. Somehow you go up and down these snakes of emotions, of talents, of goals, of even like egos, for you to go into your destiny. What is your destiny? It's knowing your truth. And that's what I love about the soul contract. I even actually just read a book called The Soul Plan, and he actually talks about how it talks about how this guy um, uses clairvoyance, and actually he hypnotized people into telling them to go back to that moment where he talks to their soul committee, to talk to them about what type of life he wants to, what he needs to learn in the next life. And for me, that was crazy, because at the same time, I'm like, wow, so that means we don't only choose our name, but we also choose our environment to be with, for us to get more impact of what we need to learn in this life.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was doing in my workshop, like the Causal Chakra. There's a day where it's fully just a meditation hypnosis that takes you to that time. And people were like, oh my God, like you can actually go to that time, but you could also come as you and kind of rewrite what's happening. And I wanted to ask you, because I'm channeling, right? I don't know it from any book. I'm just like witnessing what's happening. And the pathway was starting, of course, in your head, in the Zeal chakra. And then you go all the way outside of your physical body into your causal chakra. And the way is a rainbow bridge, like it's a bridge of rainbow colors. And then you just arrive in this pearl essence, like beautiful world of, like it's shining with all the colors, but like a pearl. And then there you have the kind of the time where you see the people and you choose. And so I wanted to know if you ever had that experience, or if I'm just the
No, I actually haven't had the experience yet. Um, I would love to actually. I
I'm
would
gonna
love.
send you the meditation.
Yes, I would. I would love to, because honestly, within the soul plan, when I started reading, it shows a lot of people that honestly, like, now I understand more about the soul. Like, honestly, for me, Capucina, like, at the end of the day, I'm very interested about our souls, how our soul are so intelligent in a way for us to like plan what we want to do, or plan like our lives, to understand, like what lesson do we need to learn. For me, that's just like interesting already. And the fact that our soul holds so much information, and holds also so much feelings, so much ego at the same time. But in reality, what holds the ego is, once we come into this body, is within our physical. And I believe, like, in a way, the soul contract, when it comes to the physical aspects and spiritual aspects of karma, is literally the ego part. It's, because everything else is kind of like, you know the situation that you have with your parents, the situation that you have with your friends or family, everything else is like a cherry on top of what's going on. It's like more lessons for you to understand. You either get caught up into the, I call it that soap opera of the drama of everything that triggers you, or you actually look at it like, why does this trigger me? why it's my soul experiencing this. It's like, certain accidents or certain situations wakes you up for your soul to be like, okay, I I'm gonna get angry, or either I understand what's going on. Like, that's my beginning of my awakening. And it's so amazing how the soul actually tells, like, has certain situations in your life that triggers you for you to wake up, for you to just like be like, okay, I'm up for it. And I'm just like, what the hell?
Stop.
Yeah. So to actually see the world, because I know it's actually, it's a I know it's a room that looks like a chess um game, I guess. And you see the soul, your soul's committee, they call it. And you're there, and you kind of say like, you want to be a man at this life, or a woman in this life. I want to have this type of mom or dad. Or, and then you also talk to the souls who are participant into your story. You're going to be the villain, and it's okay, I still love you. Like, the whole setup of your life before you come into this body, it's just, for me, it's just amazing that we are allowed to do that, that we even have that, that we do all the work for us to just basically go back to the source. Because at the end of the day, all the soul contracts that I read is like, go back to the source, go back to you, go back to the God within you, that I am. It's exactly what you said on your last video about Christ consciousness. It's like, I am. And it's literally like that. It's like, go back to the God within you, because you're basically the one. So it's really
Definitely.
beautiful. The soul contract work for me was like, at the beginning, I didn't want to share this. I'm going to be honest, because I was so intimate, and at the time, I wasn't, I didn't know if I was capable to facilitate such work. And when I did it for Denise was my first client. She's like, once you do your soul contract, I want you to do mine. And I did hers. And she was just like, literally at the end, she took her contract and she went like this. And she's like, so when are you going to facilitate this? And I'm like, excuse me? I'm like,
I'm so
Denise.
glad you did.
No, I told Denise, I was like, Denise, I'm only doing this because you asked me. And she's like, no, people need this. And then she told me about Mercurious, and then she told me that she wants to have have a school and facilitate, and then she wanted me to be her first facilitator, her first practitioner. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. like like, no, I don't know. Like, but she's like, but you have the experience. And I mean, one thing is, I go to ceremony, I help people in ceremony, I facilitate for women and men and kids, and I do that face to face, and I get to know them, and I, for a long time, and things like that. And another thing is like, doing this, that, like, there's a possibility that someone just gonna like throw this into my face, like throw the book to my face and be like, no. Like, it's because it's a harsh truth.
It is sometimes difficult to see those patterns, but it depends on the perspective that you read them with, I guess. And that's why the facilitation that comes with you is so nurturing and so mothering, that it really helps us to receive that truth. And I don't know how you did it on your own, receiving it, like just on your own with the information. So it must have been very difficult.
I was crying, Capucina. Literally, I was literally crying for weeks, and my partner was like, "Are you okay?" And I was just trying to explain to him what I was going through, because I realized that once I opened that another Pandora box, which is my soul contract, I started realizing that there were things in the past that I needed to heal. Things that it makes sense why I couldn't take that step. you know and that's why it's so powerful. Some people accept it, and some people don't accept it. Some people are like, oh, but I want you to tell me what to do next. It's like, it's right there. And it's up to you, because honestly, all I can do is facilitate the work. It's up to you where you want to take this at the end of the day. Either you put it away, like the books that we have that we're going to read them later, and ignore it, or you actually work through it so you can, you can be free, liberate yourself from all those things that you created in that reality, or that mechanism that you created for you to survive within this life.
And I love the fact that you provide recommendations that are very grounded in reality and that I really use. Like you give us writing prompts, different meditations, different practices, and different advices that are really like, well, you do need to have like an emotional support system. Like you need to surround yourself with people that are like this. And like that's the recommendation you gave me, but I'm sure it depends on anyone else's soul contract. But you really give us the steps to take it into consideration and integrate it into our life so that we're not controlled by it, but we're actually in collaboration with those contracts that we also chose to write. So thank you for that. Thank you, because I really use them. Like I really use, like I made a file and it's pinned and I always see it. So I know my prompts, my things, and it really helps me. Thank you.
And it's to be, like, I honestly honor to do each person's soul contract, because every time I work in somebody's soul contract, I get excited, because I'm like, ooh, let's see. Like, let me see. Okay. And then because I do it all in by hand. That's the first thing, because I want to connect with a person's name. And when I start doing it by hand and I start counting, and I make sure that I count everything right. You don't understand. Like, I'm particular about it too. I'm like, I have like my whole little ritual. Like, I put music, and then at the same time I'm like, okay, the name, and I put it, and I write. I make the little star from scratch, and then I put all the physical, and then I'm with my calculator right there doing everything. And at the end, I double check my work, because I always do double check my work, make sure that I'm doing it right. And when I have all the numbers, and I look at the dominant numbers, and I look at like the patterns, I'm like, ooh, this is gonna be interesting. I can't wait to meet this person. And sometimes I'm like, ooh, I don't know if this person can handle this truth. Like, I'm always worried before I go into a section with a client, because I'm like, okay, hopefully she like, she's comfortable, hopefully he's comfortable. It's a give and take, and sometimes I let things float, or sometimes I feel like I channel certain messages that they need to hear at that moment, because honestly sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what I'm saying. And because it's not my mind. I'm not there listening with my mind. I'm there to listen with my heart, and to make sure that you feel comfortable at that moment, because it's a very vulnerable moment.
It
It's
is. Whoa. Yes, it really is.
yeah, it's a very vulnerable moment. And and because I know because I went through it, I make sure that they feel comfortable. And I know that I'm not like, you know I'm not like in the media that much, or I'm not very talkative like in the media. But when it comes to the work, a one-on-one work, I'm literally there to support, because that's where my best suit is. To be honest with you, is to support you, and to support going through that process.
It's your talents.
Yeah, that's where it is. That's honestly. And sometimes I in the beginning, in the beginning of the soul contract, when I started facilitating the work, it was so much energy, because a lot of people wanted to talk. I became um like a counselor, like a psychiatrist. And then I was like, no, I can't do this. Like, I have to just facilitate the work because it's a lot of emotions. It's a lot of things to talk about because I try to break it down to for them to understand where those things come from, or if they don't see it or they see it, you know. And and sometimes it's a really touchy subject to talk about just the ego, you know, the in which, you know, some people can be like, no, I can relate to that, and I'm like, that's fine. If you don't relate to that, then that's fine. It's okay. So that means they're not receiving their own contract, you know, or they don't understand it at the moment. And I usually like hope and pray that people do, the people who are at the, you know, they don't, that they kind of reject it, that I hope they do receive it. Maybe they don't, but at least they have it, and you know, it's something that you can get away from it at the end of the day. I mean, I can get away from it. You?
I mean, it's better to have those keys in your pocket, I guess, than not have them and not know. It's been, you know, it's been really, really helpful. But I want to ask you a little thing. So we talk about soul contracts, and it's something that we decided before our birth, and it's through our name, which gives us numerology and like a lot of different aspects, and we understand that we have things to do, like goals, we have talents that will help us towards those goals, and then we have the karma, and all of that is super interesting. But is it possible to change your soul contract?
Yes.
And if so, how?
Well, this is the thing. When you have double numbers, it's a little bit hard.
I have a lot
So
of them. Damn it.
I know. No, actually, the person who wrote the book changed his name. Nicholas David Nigan. His middle name is actually not his. He added David, and the reason why was because he noticed that his middle name, I think it was Lee, wasn't embraced. He wasn't embracing it anymore, and I think he had a dream. Yeah, actually, he did. He had a dream that it was David, and so he decided to add David, and then he noticed that basically it was gonna be aligned with everything else from his first and his last name. So he aligned it with it, but that's where I kind of have to understand within the double numbers. I know there that you cannot change it, but if you don't have double numbers within your start of David or Markova, then you'll be okay. There's a possibility that you can change it.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So it goes through changing your name and then the letters.
Exactly. And also, it's not that can you change your whole name. You can only change certain aspects of your name.
Well, I do have 4 names, so remove one of them.
No, it's funny because I think I had a girl who she gave me her first and second name, and I think her and her husband created a last name together, and they changed it. Yeah, and actually it worked for her. Like somehow a year later, both of them created a last name together because they actually didn't want their last names anymore. And so I did it, and honestly, everything aligned within her new name.
That's
So there,
wonderful.
yeah, I know. And also within the soul contract work, you can also do is you can do relationships. You can put your partner's relationships with your name, and basically see how the relationships, goals and talents and karmas are going to be that you can work to it. I know
That's so cool.
that's hopefully something that I will facilitate soon, but I kind of wanted to do the individual first, and then I'll facilitate the relationship one. But that's something that has to be agreed within the both partners. I cannot do it if it's not agreed only with one person. So no, not sneaking
Oh,
around the partner.
always ask for consent, guys. Always.
Always, please,
Yes.
because honestly, that's seriously, it's funny how consenting things for other people to do work, it's very important.
Always, always. But I have a question. Does it mean that when a woman gets married and takes on the family name of their partner, um, does it mean that it changes their soul contract?
It
Because I know that
changes.
energetically, your aura and everything, it changes. Like I've seen it when I connect to someone's birth name and someone's married name, let's say. I do see like there's two different things coming on. So does it mean that you change your soul contracts and then take on the ancestral like karma of the family that you're marrying into?
On Well, honestly, you don't take on ancestral karma, because basically what you're doing is that you're taking into different numbers. Like it's mostly like vibrations. It's literally where your soul, after changing your last name, like even though you live with, let's just say, I am Claudia Baron. Oh, for example, I am Claudia Baron, and when I was married, my husband used to, his last name, it was Martinez. I actually kept my name because I like my last name a lot.
It's so
And I
beautiful.
would do that across the board. I'm sorry. But because I love my last name. But if I would have taken Martinez, of course it would change my aspects, but I think it would change it of the relationship. It would be like a new person, like a new lesson that I had to be that I have to learn. And maybe my lesson, if I would have taken my ex-husband's last name, I think I would understand the lesson that I had to do with him at that moment, you know?
Mm-hmm. But it's white to think that they don't change. Like they get married, their whole life changes, but not the soul contracts. So are we adapting into their projects,
I
in their
know.
karma? Oh, what a patriarchal world.
I
Mm.
know. So, I mean, the good thing is that you have a choice to not change your last name. Women's
Yeah,
do, you know?
yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's beautiful. Like, for example, this couple, this lady who basically created a last name together with her husband, and they agree with, they actually, she told me that they grabbed the first letters and the last letters of certain last names and they put it together.
That's very cute.
But honestly, when I read her soul contract, it was literally aligned with what she needed to hear. So it was like it was meant to be. Somehow your soul knows. Like for example, myself, I have two soul contracts. I have a soul contract from my last name from Colombia, and I have a soul contract from my last name here, because when I was here, my mom remarried, so I had a different last name. So so sometimes what I have to do is that with people that basically have two birth certificates, I have to do two soul contracts, and you have to combine them. So mine, in reality, a lot of my first last name, my first when I was living in Colombia until the one that I grew here, I had to put it together, and there was a few aspects that they were the same, and some of them were not the same. And thank God, um, one of the physical karmas, or I don't know if it's the physical or the spiritual, that it was almost the same. So I had a brighter spiritual map, and you're allowed to have two soul contracts if you have two birth certificates with two different last
That's fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing.
names.
I would love to ask you one last question, which is like you can share anything that has changed your life with those soul contracts, and like if you want to share an experience, anything that you think could be valuable to anyone watching us right now.
Honestly, for me, I feel that whoever it's aligned with the soul contract will resonate with my work, because my the work that I do, it needs to be done. I wish everybody understood what the soul contract was, and it would be easier for them to like set your mind free from whatever's going on. I feel like it's an easy way to understand your awakening as well, and straight to the point to what you need to work through. And I know it's not for everyone, but at the same time, I feel like it needs to be for everyone. But it's just me. it's just me trying to help humanity understand that there's so much tools out there, so much information, that you need to also be careful what is aligned with you and what isn't aligned with you, you know? So for me, it's like facilitating this work. I'm just going to be patient to see who comes and who can accept it, and just help the ones that is attracted to the work that I do, you know?
Thank
But
you so much for doing
no,
this for us.
no, thank you. Honestly, for me, it's really like um in general, for me, soul contract is something that it's meant for everyone. And and I wish everyone could like see how beautiful it is to understand, and to understand more about your soul, and to um already understand like the ego parts of it, and to also come into align with your destiny and your purpose within this life. And I'm very blessed, honestly, that this work came to me. And I'm happy that it came to me, because I feel like in a way I feel like it's kind of meant for me to facilitate to people. And hopefully one day I'll teach people how to do this too, this work. And hopefully one day I will. And but yes, that's it, I think.
Well, I'm so happy that it found you, and I love, what are those bookshops in LA that have books falling off the shelves for people to find them? I know so many people who have this story, like the book just fell off. It's like,
Yeah.
is it Interstellar, where like this Matthew McConaughey like just pushing books through the
It
it's
kind of
crazy.
it's funny, because if it doesn't fall out of my hand, it literally goes into Denise, and be like, Denise is like, I think this book is for you. And I'm like, no, I don't want you to give me a book.
This is how I do shopping with my friend. We go vintage shopping and she finds things for me and I find things for her. I love how
Yeah,
it works with the soul contracts.
exactly. It's seriously, sometimes I don't even take Denise to the bookstore, because I don't want her to pull a book.
Oh
And I'm just
no.
kidding. I love her. No, I love her. And it's funny, because I feel that even though the message is right there in front of you, somehow it always goes through your friends. Be like, hey, hello, here's this. So when that happens, I'm like, okay, I accept that. Like, fine, God, give this
I'm,
to me.
I'm sure it tried to come to you many times and you were like, no, 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 until they were like, okay, we have to find another way. Let's just go through the net.
Yeah. They either go through Denise or they go through my partner. And I'm just like, great, thank you. I got it.
So one last thing, what would you like to share on, like, where can people find you, and what do you want to share as links? What do you want to plug? What project do you want to talk about? This is your advertisement moment.
Oh, thank you. Well, you can find me mercurious.com, or like yeah, Mercurious. I'm sure you have a link. And I have my Instagram, which is la parcera almica, which means the friend. Parcera means friend in Colombian. It's literally like a friend. So I call myself the friend of Almica, and Almica means soul, actually. So that's where I put a lot of my pictures, because I'm a very creative eye person. I love photography, and I love to take videos too. And you can also find me on Twitter, which I think I call myself Almica Contract. And sometimes I post things, and I am actually there to support people. And but pretty much most of the work will be Mercurious. We have a membership where I actually post most of the certain things in there, like messages, or we post like updates, Akashi records. And I eventually want to like post a little bit about more about my work, hopefully. It's just I'm very shy, so I'm barely coming out of writing, like to express myself in writing and everything. So be patient with me. uh, But I'm trying to be more open to share my work, and also my work with the elements and my tradition. I like to share all those things because it's important. I feel that we all have to go back to nature and to go back to understand what the elements can give us to heal ourselves too. So that would be something that I would love to share eventually. But yeah, pretty much Twitter, Mercurious, and Instagram.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing of yourself here and being, being here on video with me. I know it's not easy, so thank you so much for this. Thank you for our time together. It was so, so, so interesting. And thank you again for this service that you offer to the world with soul contracts, because it's been very helpful for me, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people whose lives, like those 53 people whose life changed because of your session and all the future ones that are coming. Thank you.
No, thank you, and honestly, like, thank you for everything that you do. Because honestly, your videos are amazing. I love your videos. I love how informative, and I wish people will. I actually, I have a little email after my session that I send to people, and I add you because I feel that if people want to start aligning to energy work, it would be your videos are really good for them to start off, you know.
Thank you
So
so much.
no, thank you, Capucina, for letting me facilitate this, like to talk about like my work and to facilitate this video, and for taking me out of my box.
Yeah, I did it.
You're the only one who can do this.